Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be. Join us on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration as we explore the world of leadership and personal growth. In each episode, we will explore the art and science of effective leadership, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from experts and thought leaders across various industries. And now your hosts, Dawn Marie Bornhammer, Maisha B. Hoy, Janelle E. Taylor, and Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, Editor-in-Chief of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine.
I'm Maisha Hoy, CEO of BSHG LLC, which manages a marketing agency as well as a Black-owned brand marketplace, Cuba.
And I'm Dawn Bornheimer, the founder and CEO of Mission Inspired Consulting. Excited to be here with all of you.
And we are super excited to welcome our guest today, Kelly Peaks Horner and Dr. Kendra Washington Bass.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
So I have the pleasure of introducing you, Kelly. So I'm super excited about this. And I have this beautiful bio, but also just wanted to acknowledge that I just love how you came into my experience in general. And so this is just so much fun for me personally. So more formally, Kelly Peaks Horner is a public education specialist in many ways. Her career has extended over 35 years in the public education space. She partnered with school leaders at all levels, creating courageous and vulnerable cultural spaces for leadership practices, which I have no doubt is how she met Kendra. She started her career as a teacher and administrator in Fairfax County Public Schools in the state of Virginia and worked with the Gallup organization in their educational practices area for upwards of 16 years. She works as a cultural consultant and executive education coach. In 2019, she was trained by one of my favorite humans I've never met, Dr. Brene Brown, as a Dare to Lead facilitator and building courageous programs and conversations along the way. To date, she has trained over 300 school leaders in choosing daring and armored leadership. Her work centers around women in education and disrupting systems and traditional practices, founding in the development and support. Kelly's the co-founder, along with Kendra, of the Lucy Leadership Project and is best-selling author of Unwrapped, The Pursuit of Justice for Women in Educators.
And I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Kendra Washington Bass. She has over 25 years in education. She's a national designer and a facilitator at the Leadership Academy. She amplifies student engagement through partnerships with schools, fostering critical consciousness skills and fostering equitable curricula. Formerly an executive director in Gwinnett County Public Schools, Dr. Washington Bass empowered leaders and pioneered instructional capacity growth. She is also, as Dawn mentioned, a best-selling author and co-founder of the Lucy Leadership Project, where she champions women in leadership, enhancing their ability to thrive and excel in their roles. Welcome, welcome, and welcome.
Thank you so much. That sounds impressive, Kelly.
Yeah, right. Doesn't it?
Now I know why I'm tired.
Oh my goodness. And guys, to our viewers and listeners, this is going to be a wonderful dialogue and conversation tonight with these ladies. We are just super excited. And, we shared a lot about their background. But I'm going to start by asking you to just share how you all came to start working together to lead this work with the Lucy Leadership Project.
All right, Kelly, you're going to have to hit it because I'll pick up on the back end because you do a great job of telling how we met.
So Kendra and I have known each other for about 14 years or so. Mm-hmm. And we met when I was working at Gallup, and Gwinnett County Public Schools was actually one of my very first client partners when I was at Gallup. And about maybe not even a year or two into that partnership, I walked in one day, and one of the things I love to do at Gwinnett is They were real deep thinkers there. And I loved to go and we'd sit in a room and we'd whiteboard and we'd talk and we'd think about what don't you know? What can we help you know? What do you want the future to look like? And I walked in one day and there was someone different there. And she was short like me. She talked as fast as I did. We started finishing each other's sentences and I went, phew, my sister is here. Where I was used to, Gwinnett is in Georgia, and I was used to very long, drawn out conversations just because the nature of the cadence, where then here comes Kendra, originally from Harlem, New York, and she and I are just going a mile a minute. So I went, okay, this is going to be good. And through the years of working with Gwinnett, I got to work very closely with Kendra on a lot of different projects through the A+ Leadership Academy. And then probably around 2016, no, actually it was after that. But I was started to go through at Gallup the culture had shifted and it had shifted, and I write about this in the book, and it had shifted in a way that I could no longer do my best work there. And it became pretty toxic. So I had gone through that for about 2 years or so before I decided to leave there. And after I left, Kendra and I connected again. And the way the world works is just magical, because as I was coming out of that, Kendra was starting to go into that. And so as she's telling me her story, and I'll let her tell that, as she's telling me her story of what she was going through, I just looked at her and said, I got you. I know exactly. I've been there. I'm on the other side of it. I'm still coming out of it, but I got you. And then around 2020, right? Don't I have those dates right? Around 2020.
Yes.
When schools and the world had to shut down for the pandemic, Kendra and I started to connect on Zoom, and we would just talk about, what do we want to do next? What does our next journey look like? And I had always had in the back of my mind, I want to write this book for women's leadership, right? I want to tell my story. I want to tell others, because I can't believe I'm the only one. And so I remember, and this is as simple, I know people want to know, was there a lot of thought into that? No, I texted her one day and I said, hey, you want to write a book about women's leadership? And she said, yes. And that's how, then for 2 years, we met every week. We met for about an hour. We talked for 55 minutes about everything but the book. And then for the last 5 minutes, we'd say, oh, that chapter you just wrote? Yeah, you need to change this. You need to add this. You need to do this. Okay, yeah, you need to do this. Okay, break. And then we'd go and then we'd come back again. And we knew that we had something in those 2 years, because we thought if we have these discussions for 2 years, and the discussions ended up being chapters in the book. And so we knew that if we need to have these discussions, we know there are women out there that need to have these discussions and conversations. And so we birthed almost a year coming up, Unwrapped, and we knew we needed something to ground it in, which is why we then started the Lucy Leadership Project, and now are looking at ways that, that is a space for women leaders, for women education leaders that's going to be their space, their brave space to come and do the work that they need to do so that they can thrive. Pass it on.
All right. The only thing that I'm going to add to that is sort of the other perspective. So, yes, I was coming from New York City into Georgia. I was still like a fish out of water, trying to understand culturally the sort of lens of the South, and also a new school district. I was working in New York City public schools. So, that's the largest district in the nation. And then I came to Gwinnett, which was the largest school system in the state of Georgia. And while large, that felt very, very small and tight, and everyone knew everyone, and everyone had the same language, and everyone spoke the same words. And I was just like, wow, what an interesting case study of this organization that was very much aligned and conservative, and yet pushed the envelope a bit. But I still felt like a fish out of water. So when I met Kelly, it's women, we don't even have to say words. right? You could just look across, the spidey sense tingles, and it's like, bam, that she is part of my tribe. I know her, right? So we gravitated toward each other and remained that way our entire times. Even though we were partners in a consultancy, we were friends. We were growing as friends, starting to learn more about who she was as a person. And I did notice something shifted with her in her career around 2018, 2017. Wasn't quite sure what it was, but we remained connected. I was at a family reunion in DC and connected with Kelly there and was like, let's go out to lunch. And we met for lunch, like just stayed in touch. And I think we talk about our ancestors. That's a whole nother story between, Black women and white women, talking about how, our ancestors help us or not. And and I always just say, there is a reason why we've stayed connected this entire time. And learning about her journey and having someone who gets it, having someone who you build community with, allows you to, it confirmed that what I was experiencing wasn't in my head. So there was comfort in the camaraderie that we had similar experiences. And then it was frustrating that we were having similar experiences. And as we talked with more and more women, even just sort of promoting the idea of writing this book and starting this community called Lucy Leadership Project, just more and more of us, the stories were very similar. And it wasn't like I didn't know they existed. The depth of which women are wrestling with the leadership space is just incredible. And I know that we have an opportunity to help move the numbers, as Kelly said, and make women thrive, not just keeping our heads above water or waiting to get permission for someone to tell us our worth. And so that's sort of what converged. And as Kelly shared in 2020, for most people, it's that time in our lives where we'll never forget. I grew up in New York City. 9/11, 2001 is a time in my life I'll never forget, right? There's moments I'll never forget. The Challenger explosion. I'll never forget the first Black president. I'll never forget 9/11, right? I'll never forget 2020. And in that moment, it was an awakening for me to claim myself, to protect and move from hustling all the time to sort of transforming. So as much as we talked about the book, it really was an opportunity to, pun definitely intended, to unwrap, to peel the layers of the layers of who I was not, the layers of who I was pretending to be, and to have somebody to walk that path with and let me be. And I think the most unique thing is we are white women and Black women doing this. And I did not have to teach Kelly what to do, right? It was a whole different type of relationship with a white woman that I had not had, when she's not asking me, so tell me how you do this and why is it that Black. She never asked a single question. She didn't ask about my hair. She didn't ask about why Black people do this.
And I never touch it.
She's never touched my hair. Or not asked to. But it was, so both of us are going through different learning, but they're all around race and gender issues. And we are sharing that experience, as hard as it is, but it is a model, I think. I think we're modeling what can be done. I think we're modeling how it can be done. And we're modeling it, even though it hurts, with bravery, with courage, and with conviction. So that's a little bit about sort of how we are. And that we talk every week. And Kelly is part of my family. She has been invited to the cookout for the white people. That's when you can be part of the Black family. She didn't
Yeah,
know
I
that.
learned that.
Right. She
I
learned that.
thought it was a real cookout when someone said,
Yeah,
you got invited to the cookout. And I went, no, it's a Zoom call.
That is
yeah,
too
They're like,
funny.
no.
it was the barbecue, but yeah,
So.
she's been invited to the cookout, and we've been warmly accepted into her family. I mean, she's my sister.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love that. And I love the natural way that you all came together, not forced at all. I love that.
No,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it was a text, really.
I love it.
Want to write about it? Yeah. Okay.
Before I ask my official question that Dr. Sharon has us do, what's the meaning behind Lucy? How did you come up with that name for the Lucy Leadership Project?
Yeah, we were trying to figure out what's the best symbol, what's the best way to describe who we are and how we want to support a community of women. And so we went back to the origin. So I was always intrigued with anthropology. And I was like, wait, Lucy was the anthropological find in Kenya in the 1970s. And it's been known for many years as the first sort of humanoid. And it was woman. Like, she is Eve. And
It
she
was an African woman because she was
an
found in
African woman.
Ethiopia.
So
Yeah.
we all from the continent, right? So African woman, short in stature, right? Short in stature. She was known to walk on 2 feet. There was a lot that they were able to infer about this probably oldest human that the planet has seen. And a lot of it has to do with sort of the innards of a woman. And we were like, that's it. It's Lucy. That's who we want to get to. That's who we want to call. So when we talk about answer, that's who we want to call into the space, that we are the result of years and years of resiliency and survival. And we hearken it back to Lucy. So I don't know, we really searched. We looked at like all types of symbols and things like that.
We Googled everything.
We did. We were like, oh, wait. And it was like, oh, shoot. It's
Lucy.
Lucy. That's it. And it just felt good. And so we always keep her as part of the legacy. We keep her legacy alive.
Well, that's, I love the story. I love the name. I love the simplicity of it. But it actually leads me to my official question, which is, when do you start to see that inequality of leadership? And for me, not an educator, I don't know the journey that a teacher has to take to become superintendent, to become chief of this or deputy of that. So when does that leadership gap start to happen? Or does it start back because we were babies and we're taught, how to be women?
Yeah, that's,
yes.
I mean, that's what's interesting, right? That even though our work primarily supports educators, education system creates the socialization of what it means to be male, female, who is a leader, who is the hunter, who's a gatherer, who's the person out front, right? And so we start to see it happen at a very young age in young girls. And part of Kelly and I's the structure of the book and the way that we do our work always focuses around the origin, our own origin story. So that's why Lucy is just incredible, that she is the origin of our work, because we believe that before we can get to being our authentic selves, we really have to examine how we've been socialized. If we don't take stock and look in the mirror about, what have I been wearing? What have my own internalized racism? I'm just going to say it, right? Just, for me to say this now, it's easier for me to say it now. I probably would not have been able to say it years ago, but my closeness to whiteness is how I navigated being accepted. And to the point where I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Like, who am I? What is that? Like, I look at pictures and I'm like, that's totally not who I feel like I am on the inside. So what was I compromising? And part of it had to do with the conditioning as being a young Black person, a young Black woman, and what it meant when I spoke in places and the stereotypes that come with that. Well, that's learned, right? I can point to times that maybe Kelly did not have this conversation with her mother, but the talk was not about the birds and the bees. It was about how to stay safe from the police. It was about how to kind of stay small, how to lower your voice, or when you can, like, this is a serious contradiction, this tug of, hold your own, but not too much, be Black, but not Black enough, speak up, but be silent. It was this whole thing. And, you learn that when you're a kid. You learn that as a kid. You see it happening in classrooms. You see if teachers are pushing girls or students of color sort of to be back and lifting other ideas. And it just manifests in the workplace. Not just in education spaces, but also in corporate America, in nonprofits. You see it happening. So we're calling out education specifically because it's our lived experience, but that's the plate. I mean, schooling is where it gets, packaged even more so. And what we're seeing right now is this butt up against the system and people butting back against it, because young people now are like, this box that you've been trying to keep us in, that no longer defines us. I'm very proud of our young students that are speaking their minds and saying, you're not going to box me by my gender. You're not going to box me by my color. You're not going to box me in my books, right? And then what are our adults doing? Banning them, restricting them, right? And going, no, we wanted you in that box, because it fed the system over and over again. So Maisha, to your initial question and how I responded, it starts, very, very young, and it manifests itself into how even I thought about myself as a leader. I always thought of myself as someone who led, but I always took a step back when I saw men, like, all right, then you do it first. Like you go ahead. And it was just the conditioning of being taught, not just in my own family, but just, the environmentally, what the role was, what my place was.
The only thing I would add is that, to your question, Maisha, we intentionally put in the book some of the history of education, how just going back to role identification, and it was believed that women were natural nurturers. So women should be in the classroom. Men were leaders. So men should be in charge. Men should be principals, headmasters, whatever you want to call them, in charge. Superintendents today, divisions. And so when does it start? It starts the minute you step into the classroom, because you're trying to navigate a system that wasn't created for you or by you. And so one of the words that Kendra and I like to use all the time is disrupt. How do we disrupt that system to not only for women, more women to lead schools, because we firmly believe schools would look different if women really led them from a women's perspective, not women leading schools the way men want us to lead them, but from a women's perspective. And if women were able to rise to levels, higher levels of positions and stay there and thrive. And so the only way to do that is to disrupt the system. And so when you see, an example would be, if I'm going to interview for a principalship and the principal before me was a man and could be out 6 nights a week and could be out until 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and could be because he had a spouse or partner at home taking care of everything at home, then what is the school board expecting? The next person's going to do the same thing, where we need to step up and say, hey, the way I do it may not look like the way the man before me did it, but I can be just as effective. Because our societal roles, as much as we like to think, have not caught up. All you have to do is look at the statistics from the pandemic. It was more women came out of the workplace in order to help kids go to school. More women lost jobs, more women, because we were still the ones that were doing the majority of the heavy lifting at home. And so we need to be able to step up and say, no, we're going to disrupt the system, but it takes for us to unwrap what the system has done to us so that we can disrupt the system. So we don't need to be fixed, as we often say. Women don't need to be fixed. We need to unwrap what we've internalized that the system has done to us.
Wow. Wow. Kendra and Kelly for president, vice president.
You go first,
The world
Kendra.
will look different. The world will look different.
Well, so much comes up for me listening to you both speak, and it's, so exciting and refreshing. I did really enjoy your book as well. And, for me, as a former Baltimore City public school teacher, I remember having to earn the right
Yes.
as being one of the only white women, in their community. And they had relationships and experiences that didn't align with care, compassionate, active listening. And so I knew that there was a space for me to just continue to be consistent and to earn the right to be there and to show that I cared and to wait for the parents to be ready, right? But to also just keep co-creating with them and partnering with them and meeting them where they were. And so listening to you, Kendra, reminds me of that moment and that experience, and just recognizing that it took time and that was okay. Yes. I knew trauma-informed care before it was a thing in education, because I was in the school system in the early 2000s. And, I say all of that to say, one of the things I love about your book is that you opened up with your stories. And I often love the quote that when you share your story, you give others permission to do the same. And so I would just love for you guys to share a little bit about how important it was to you to open with your stories as a way to set the stage for these powerful conversations that follow.
Yeah. Yeah, that origin story. First of all, anyone who is listening, any woman who is listening, writing and reviewing your origin story is a lifelong endeavor. It's not like you sit down one weekend and say, I am going to write everything that's ever happened to me in my life. Because over the 2 years, Kendra and I would remember different things and, oh yeah, this, oh that. But what it does is it starts to draw a clearer picture around, period. It draws a clearer picture of you and the person you are today and why. And so what I saw was a lot of patterns, a lot of the same patterns. I was raised as the middle child, a girl, an older brother, a younger sister, in a household where both parents worked, even though at that time it was unusual for my mom to work, but she worked. And I took on the role of the peacekeeper. I always did things to just make sure that everything was running smooth. Mom would leave a list of stuff for us to do, chores for us to do when we got home from school. And I was the one that was always harping on my brother and my sister to, come on, we got to get them done before mom gets home. Because I knew then the rest of the night, not that it was abusive, but it sure would be a lot easier. I learned to cook at a very early age because I could get dinner started before mom got home. When I reminded my dad when there were special events like Christmas, anniversaries, birthdays, Dad, it's
Christmas.
Mom's birthday's coming up. Yeah. Yeah. Christmas, mom's going to expect something under the tree, and then he would give me, here's $20. I'd walk down to the mall. I'd pick her something out, wrap it up in a fancy bow and put it under. And then I knew that then, the celebration would keep the peace. And so I kind of lived on this. What that did is it silenced me. So when I got to a point where I needed to have a hard conversation, or I needed to speak my truth, or I needed to say no about something, or I wouldn't do that. And that was part of what was happening in the workplace before I left Gallup. Had I to do it over again and had done my origin story, well, this is why I'm not speaking up. This is why, because it will disrupt the peace. Because someone might get upset. Someone might get angry. So the power behind writing your origin story is to see those patterns of the way we were socialized, to be in the world, and then not to deny them, but to embrace them and say, is this serving me or is this not serving me? And how do I put it down if it's not serving me? And then what do I pick up? So one of the things that I found was, no, that wasn't serving me. I need to not tap out of hard conversations. I need to speak my truth, but I don't know how. I need words. This is where, quite honestly, this is where the Brene Brown work really empowered me. That's how I discovered her work, because she gave me words. She gave me processes. She gave me ways to do that I didn't have. So it was really important for Kendra and I, because I think we came together. She and I came together in our partnership because of our stories, because what we were experiencing in our life. One of the things we didn't talk about too is the other thing that brought us together was, something very powerful happened in 2020 in our country. And we all saw the murder of a Black man on TV, and we watched that. And so before Kendra and I started to really work together, I had already spent about 1.5 to 2 years doing my own internalized racism unpacking. And I had already done that work. So that's why I knew when we came together, her job was to be my friend first, and for us to figure out how we can work together. Her job wasn't to educate me. My job was to do that work. And so one of the things we kind of laugh about when we keynote is we will often say, okay, we are not saying all white women go out and find yourself a Black woman, all Black women go out and find yourself a white woman, because, white women are not all safe for Black women. But to start that work, because I think what we want to be is kind of a symbol or metaphor of what could possibly be if women were able to be in brave and safe spaces together. And so that's a part of my origin story that I wrote, that I needed to do that. There was a lot I had not realized that I needed to do that unpacking. So that origin story is just critical. And we keep going back to it. And we'll always go back to it. And it just helps you look at who you are today and why.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So my pattern that I uncovered was do it, get it done, do it now. If someone don't wait, just go. And it really came from examining how the women in my family were the ones that were the pillars. They were the ones that took care of everything. So interesting. And Kelly, you were on Zoom with the family the other night, and my brother was just commenting about how when he looks back over his young life, he's like, I didn't have the male role models. He said, my sister and my mother did their best, but he said, unfortunately, the men were not there. And that's what I experienced as a young girl, was my grandmother took care of everyone. Our house was always sort of like boarding. People were coming in to lay on the couch, to spend the night, to get something to eat. So here's what's interesting. I knew my great grandmother, both of them actually. So I have a picture of my great grandmother, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, and me, the 5 generations of us, and their siblings, right? And many of the pictures that we'll see, of people doing work were the women making the decisions. And I just remember watching my mother, who graduated from high school at 16, married at 18, had 2 children by 20, just in a constant state of hustling. She was just working so hard. And when something just needed to get done, I just saw her just like, I'm just going to do it. Or she needed to study, she would go into the bathroom and close the door to study. At the time, my father was playing loud music. I just didn't see the support from men in my family. And so I can see the patterns of one, I remember going like, I'm not getting married because I don't have to deal with that. I want to jump in and sort of solve it, right? I'm not going to wait. I'm surprised that I've been married for almost 28 years. Like I have a partner because we talk about that now. Like, how did I do? So I saw this pattern of just do it. Don't wait don't wait, don't get hurt. Armor up, tough as nails. And a lot of it was survival, and a lot of it was for me to not have to feel. So, I'm not a crier, really. I probably started crying more now with Kelly, but I'm not really a crier. I'm not super emotional in terms of sappiness. I don't like romantic comedies. I love sci-fi and horror. Like, you could see the things that when people are like, oh, that commercial, I'm like, turn, I'm not feeling it. I think just because of the conditioning of that. What that has led to me in my leadership, though, is it has been a gap in, I think, in how I can respond with emotion for fear of being hurt. Now, how that gets looked at as a woman who shows up as a Black woman has a lot of implications. And I think that's the part that for me is the hardest, or when the challenge comes up and I've hit something and I'm just like, woo, that one pushed me back. I have a difficult time sort of wrestling with the emotions that I'm feeling around that. So I try to stay, I try to put those emotions in check. So I'm learning to lean into those emotions. I'm learning to peel those layers and be more vulnerable. Being vulnerable, not because I want people to know what's on the inside. It's helping me to actually heal. So I can show up with less fear, more compassion. And I guess you see, like, I'm more fun to be around. I'm not so tense and pent up for fear that I'm going to get hurt, right? And so that is something that I have learned from doing that origin story, and I see it manifesting in my relationships again with my family, with my two sons, with my husband, but also even as an educator, just being able to think about like how many times I might have missed opportunities with students or with peers to lead in a different way. And I think that has helped tremendously with how I show up now. My husband is just like, yes, finally I got my wife back, right? It's like this whole, he's enjoying this part of me that I have sort of withheld for a while.
Well, thank you both for that. That's so beautiful. And I think we have the opportunity to heal our generational patterns forwards and backwards through our lived experience. And so here we are walking through it, right? Yes. And deciding what we've learned and where we want to be, and kind of the messy middle, right? But also being willing to do it because we know it's so important. And I'm so grateful to hear the ripple effect that your loved ones are experiencing and those that you lead are experiencing. So thank you.
Thanks.
So I just want to talk a little bit about systemic barriers. Just so glad, my love work is women in educational leadership. And so one of the systemic barriers that we have traditionally known about is the lack of mentorship for women who aspire, right, to the principalship. The absence, we all know, of female role models that really can hinder the development of aspiring women. So what are your thoughts on this fairly new movement? I'm talking within the last 10 years of the focus on the career advancement of women in education. The assistant to superintendents Academy has launched the Aspiring Academy for Female Leaders. They now have the National Women's Leadership Consortium. NASP has a focus on women. So you're now seeing it, right? And we're actually beginning to see some evidence of that with now a growing number of women superintendents, and more specifically, women of color superintendents. So what are your thoughts on now this newfound or this now sense of purpose for focusing on women and helping their careers advance?
I'll just start us off, and then Kelly, you can just pick up. This is going to be brief, and that is, I learned that from a friend of mine when having a panel almost similar to this. She coined the term femtorship. And we've sort of taken that moniker as well, because there is a different way that we coach each other. And I think we have to be really careful about not coaching each other or mentoring each other to just survive or to acclimate. So I was mentored, and I was mentored by someone who I think time bound, that was the right kind of advice. But in the moment that I was there, it wasn't. It was actually harmful. It was guidance on when to speak, when not to speak, what to wear, how to wear my hair, the type of clothes. It was all about acculturation. It was all about fitting in. It was about stripping my Blackness, and I listened, right? I was just like, okay, well, I mean, outside of my hair, maybe, but like the tattoos of covering those up, or wearing pantyhose and dress this way, and in meetings, don't say anything, just sit and take notes, and right. That was her survival. That wasn't mine. And so I think one of my commentaries here around this new movement is for women to be very careful about how we are mentoring or femtoring. Are we doing this for us to simply fit in? Are we doing this gathering, this support, this community to amplify who we already are and show up who we are? Now, there is opportunity. I mean, there's going to be ways that we have to navigate and we have to deal with. So if I show up the way that I am in this space, my question is, why do you want to get in that space? Why do you feel like you need that space for worth? Is there a way for you to either create your own space or find a space where you can be who you are? And we don't typically have those conversations. I've never been part of that conversation in femtorship. It really has been, how can I shift myself to fit in there so that I can be worthy and accepted? And so I hustled my career to do that. I went to the right school. I did the right work. I got the right PhD. Like I did the ladder. I did it all. Only at the end, I didn't have to do that. It still got me to the outcome that I was hoping that I would not get. And that is passed over. So, yay to I'm glad that person feels good about what they mentored, but it didn't actually lead me. It left me with more scars than feeling like I was empowered to be who I am. And I think that is one of the things, maybe a criticism of some of the gathering and the networks that we're seeing. There is potentially harmful advice, but it's wrapped with good intentions. I get it. But that's why Kelly and I advocate for the origin, advocate for the unwrapping, advocate for, let's do some work to determine like who you are in the space. How have you been navigating it? And whether or not you're hustling to get gratification from something that is not going to serve you and it's only going to make you small.
Yeah, I would start with I think one of the most, well, maybe not most, but one of the harmful movement that hit women was this whole idea of leaning in. And every time I hear that, I cringe. And every time I hear the person who belongs to that phrase, I cringe. Because lean into what? Are we supposed to lean into a patriarchal system and try to thrive? Are we supposed to lean into the misogyny that we experience all the time and pretend it doesn't happen? Are Black, brown, indigenous women of color supposed to lean into microaggressions and pretend they don't exist and they don't occur? What are we leaning into? And so I think sometimes that's the perspective that it's been my experience that some of those programs are taking. We're going to teach you how to survive the system. We're not going to try to change the system, but we're going to try to teach you how to survive the system. And is there something to that? Yeah, maybe there might be something to that. The other thing that Kendra and I talked about early on, and we even say this in the book, is that we've been doing a lot of mentoring. We've been doing a lot of gathering. We've been doing a lot of networking. And yes, the numbers are moving, but gosh, are they moving at if you look at over the last decade or two, how much we've been doing, and you look at how much we're talking about,
3%,
yeah,
maybe not even that.
small percentage of increases. But yet we're supposed to go, yay, we went up 2%, we went up 1%, and we're supposed to, and so do I think that we still need to do that? Absolutely. I still think we need to gather. I think we need to mentor. I think we need to coach. And there is a difference between mentoring and coaching. Kendra and I are both certified coaches. And when I coach a woman leader who is thinking about becoming an assistant, if it's a teacher thinking about becoming assistant principal or an assistant principal to principal or principal further up, the first thing I always ask is, why do you want to do that job? Why do you want to do that? Because I want to make sure it's not just another rung on the ladder they think they need to achieve. I will be worthy when I have that title behind my name, more worthy. Why do you want to do that? Do you want to do that because another thing I coach them around is advanced degrees. I want to get a PhD. Why? Or an EDD. Why? I'm not telling you not to, but let's be real clear, because there's a financial commitment, there's a time commitment, there's an impact on the people around you and your family. Let's make sure you really know why you want to do it. If it's because, I'm thinking of one assistant principal I coached for a very long time. She should be working in higher ed in data. She loves research, education research. That's her place. Go do it. You will get a PhD, you will fly through that. She will get it done in 2.5 years. I've coached others where I've said we need to unpack that a little bit more because it's a worthiness issue. I'll be more worthy when I have some initials before or after my name. And so I think, so my question is, are we having those kinds of conversations? Are we having conversations around where's the place for you? Maybe where you are now, if you want to become go into leadership, maybe where you are now is not the place because you're not going to change the system there. But is there someplace else you can, if that's possible? So do I think that there is still more work to do within even those programs? I do. And I think a lot of that, I get concerned when the message inside those programs is you don't need to change. And you don't need to be fixed, but there's a whole lot you've got to unwrap and figure out before you move in. Otherwise, what we see are women rising to leadership positions and sabotaging other women who want to rise to leadership positions.
Oh, yes.
Or we see, because there's not enough room at the table, but I got my chair and I don't know how to make the table any longer. So I'm just going to protect my chair and make sure nobody else gets a chair. Or we see or we see, see, how do I say this? We see white women move into leadership and they treat other women in a way that is not equitable, that they, in a way they shouldn't be treating them. So they have to unpack that. We internalize the misogyny that we experience. Here, I'll give you an example. Before Kendra and I started working together, I did a closing keynote at a women's education conference. And one of the things I like to do is I like to sit in some of the sessions so that especially if I'm closing, so then I can kind of say, oh, I heard this over here and I heard that. So one of the sessions was a panel discussion about a book that the panel of women had read. And there was a slide that they put up, and it said, these are masculine emotions, these are feminine emotions. I nearly fell out of my chair. And I'm going, this is a room full of women. No one's batting an eye. No one's saying anything. And when I stood up, I called the attention to some of the things I had heard. And I said, I would not be standing in my values if I didn't call out something else that I saw. And when we say things like, this is masculine, this is feminine, or we put labels on that, that is our own internalized misogyny coming forward. That's what we've been taught. And it's why a Black woman runs for vice president, has to sit on the dais and smile while she tells the white man, shut up.
I'm speaking.
But she needs to say, I'm not done speaking. And you know what she really wanted to say, but she has to say, I'm not done speaking. It's why we criticize a white woman who's running for president. We talk about her hair and her pantsuits and not her, not what she's going to do for the economy or for, the security of the nation. So those are the things. So those are big examples. But we carry that with us too. And that's part of what we have to unpack. So as we are going to, and we're going to create space as we rise to leadership positions and we're going to pull other women up, we need to make sure we are doing that. But we need to make sure we're doing it in a way where we are either healed or are healing ourselves. And I think synonymous with healing is unwrapping. We are unwrapping all that we've experienced ourselves as we go into those positions. So yeah, I mean, I love it. And I'll tell you what I love too. I'm seeing some organizations coming out with some really good data because, the data cannot be denied. So when you look at data, you got to look at the data around women in leadership or lack thereof. Or some of the slow progress we're making. But inside those working groups, I think there might be some additional work that can be added to what is already occurring.
Thank you for that.
I wish I met y'all 10, 15 years ago. I'm in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia has a good history. We had our first African-American superintendent.
Yep.
I know many principals, teachers, et cetera, et cetera. But something that you said just now, I think it was you, Kelly, yes. We have these Black female principals, I'll just say female principals and the color needed, and that disconnect, right? That seat at the table. So I have a two-part question. One is, if someone's listening to you right now, you talked about knowing your origin story, disrupt the system, but if we don't know how to do that, where do we begin?
Mm-hmm.
And then second, how do we bring more of your type of thoughts to everyone, not just educators? I have learned a lot just from listening. So it's a lot in those questions, but you see where I'm going with that.
Yeah. So where do you start? We've recommended a couple of things. I think as educators, the one thing that we have right at our fingertips is education, right? We have access to people and knowledge. And so it requires a person to be a learner, to pick up a book. Actually, oh shucks, I thought it was next to me, but I'm reading Elizabeth Laba's book, I'm Not Yelling. And she's actually going to be on one of our book talks soon. And she chronicles her experience in the education sector as a Black woman, and how she has been perceived. The I'm not yelling, like that passion, that angry Black woman sort of trope that has been used. But I'm reading, right? So part of it is educating ourselves about who we are, our work, our socialization. So it does start with educating and reading. It does also begin with self-reflection. It begins with looking inward at what is going on. Listen, it also can begin with therapy. Like there is something to be said about having a professional work with you as you're thinking, whether it is a career coach or a psychologist, to help you sort of understand how you're moving. In fact, in 2 weeks, we are hosting we are having our book talk with a renowned psychologist, Dr. Christina Camp, who specializes in women trauma in the workplace, right? And so part of the beginnings of that is educating and being open to the possibilities, not leaning in, sorry, Kelly, into victimhood, but just understanding, so where do I go and why am I navigating the way that I'm navigating? So that, I think that's like the first part of your question. And then I think the next piece to just educating yourself is about the communities that Kelly and I are creating, right? We're opening these forums. We have these monthly book talks that we do. We encourage people to read the book because it is, I think, as you said, Dawn, you can relate. It's not written in a way that spews out a bunch of statistics. It is the story that you can actually follow our lives. And then the story of the sort of the masses, you can see yourself in it. And that's some of the feedback we received. But we are creating communities. Just as Dr. Sharon, you shared, these organizations are doing this. We are creating communities, but our conversations are deep and rich and sustained over time. We attend to well-being. We talk through how to set boundaries. We talk about the socialization we've experienced, and we don't stop there. We stop at, so how do we help each other? How do we walk away from every interaction that we have with women, every experience we have, with nuggets of greatness that can be used right now? Whether that is, yeah, you know what? Get rest. The work is going to be there. Stop what you're doing. Get your physical. Check your blood pressure. Have fun. When was the last time your belly laughed? Truly had fun? When's the last time you were spontaneous? When's the last time you truly fought for something and bet on yourself? Like, those are sort of questions we have. I think what is unique about what Kelly and I are doing, or the niche, is it's sustainable. It's deep transformational work. It's not a one hit with us. You're not coming to a little conference or coming to a little community gathering and it's over. Like, this is, come with us on this journey for the long haul. I'm trying to undo 400 years of enslaved, of incarceration in my mind and in the system. That doesn't happen in a conference. It doesn't happen in a meeting, right? The same amount of time, even longer, of misogyny, right? And patriarchy. So we're in for the long haul, which means our numbers are not going to move like right there. And we understand that. but for us, it's deep and it's rich. And we're creating communities to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I would just add that one of the things that we have to realize, and what one of the things we've experienced, is that not all women are ready for this.
Right.
When we keynote, and we keynote together, and it's like this. It's like a conversation with the authors. And when I usually get to the part around talking to the white women in the room and talk to them about how can you use your privilege to bring other people, other women, into the conversation, to get out of the way so you can lift up our Black and Brown Indigenous sisters of color. How can you, I mean, you can see it. You can see it from the stage. What do you mean? I mean, the clutching of the pearl start and everything else, what are you talking about? Privilege, and we've gotten it in evaluations afterwards. We fully expect that. And what we say to each other is, if we don't get some of that pushback, maybe the message, we're not saying the right thing, because that's part of, we need to feel uncomfortable, because that the growth is on the other side of that discomfort. When I talk about, white supremacy culture, when I talk about all of that. And so we have to be so if women are ready to have those conversations, that's what we're building within Lucy Leadership. And I'm just going to do a commercial, because one of the things we've built is, we knew, Maisha, we kind of expected your question that other women, and we had it almost right away after they read the book. Now what? I read the book, but now what? So one of the things we created some online modules that women can go on their own journey, and it takes you through the book. But there's case studies, there's reflections in there, there's videos of Kendra and I talking to you about it. And what we encourage women to do is, don't wait to be picked for one of those other programs. Pick yourself.
Bet on you.
And pick the women that you want to be in community with, and start your own Unwrapped community. Get the book, go through the modules together, meet and talk, reach out to us. We'll jump on Zoom with you if you're across the country or somewhere else. We'll talk you through some of the things. Let's create these. Our dream would be to have these little unwrapped communities all over the place, where women are doing this work together, and they're picking themselves. They're not waiting to be picked. I ditto therapy and counseling. One of the things Brene Brown says is, the minute you go into leadership, you need to get a good therapist. Right? Because you are going to second guess yourself all the time. You're going to think you're not worthy. You're going to think you're not enough. When I left Gallup, and my mindset was, why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't all the awards I was getting and everything that was going on not enough? I had to shift. I had to have someone help me shift that mindset to say, it's not about you. It's not. And I needed that. So that's another thing that I would say, is that we also want to hear from women as they read the book and tell us, what else do you need? So we're also doing, we're going to do another well-being workshop in February. So we're going to do an evening of about, 2 hours of a well-being workshop. I'm creating, and it's part of Lucy Leadership, but we're creating a 3-part series on boundary setting. Do you know how hard it is for women to set boundaries? To say no, to say this is okay, but that's not okay. And every time I teach Dare to Lead, and I teach that to women, we spend more time on boundary setting than on almost any other thing. Wow. Because we're afraid to say no, because we're afraid that we'll never be offered again. If I give this up, will I never have another opportunity to do it again? So part of what we're building is what we're hearing other women tell us they want and need. And, we would invite anyone who listens to the podcast to go on LucyLeadershipProject.com and just subscribe to our newsletter, because we'll put, every month we do a newsletter, and we'll put in, in fact, I think we even put in this month that we're going to be on here. So to watch for it. And so we'll tell people where we are, what's coming up, where we'll be speaking or what. And then we ask, give us feedback. Tell us what else. What else should we be thinking about that you can't find out there? Because what we're trying to do is fill the gap and figure out what. So, we would say start with the book because that'll direct you to your origin story. Create your own community, get into community with other women that you feel safe and can be brave around. And then reach out to us and let us know how we can help or tell us what else we need to be thinking about.
I hope they hear you.
Yes.
And thank you for letting me do that.
I know, it's beautiful. Thank you. So my question's really around, it's been about a year since the book came out. I think your anniversary is next week, if I remember correctly. And there's a lot of learning that happens along the way, right for you as you take it out into the world and you release it. But also, I'm hoping that you received a lot of affirmation that you're doing something good here, right? That this was needed and that you're helping and serving people at the level that you had hoped and prayed was going to come to fruition. And so I would love for you to just share maybe one of those stories that's on your heart that said to you, we're doing it. We're doing the right thing here, right? Even if it's hard, even if you're getting some of those survey responses that are challenging you, you just know in the fiber of your being, you're on the right track here.
Yep.
I would just love for you to share.
Yeah. I'll share a card I received. So there's still something special about a handwritten note. And it was from a leader. I will say she is in a position of leadership now that I was not expecting. Right. It was a reach out through social media that was like, hey, I got something I want to give to you. Can I have your address? I didn't know what it was that she was giving. And it was a note about the book and how the words, to paraphrase, empowered her. Basically, it stopped her in her tracks from where she thought she was going to go to where she really needed to go. And she just wanted me to know that the book inspired her to show up as herself and not to conform to an idea of what she should be as a leader. And I don't care if it was just one person who, like, that right there, that leader is living, she's doing what I was not able to do early on. She's doing what I wish I would have done as a 20-something, 30-something-year-old leader. Right.
Beautiful.
So yeah. I find that is incredible. Just to hear you even, Dawn's like, I read your book and you picked it up, right? Just people who pick it up or said, another quick story. I was at brunch on Sunday. I meet with a group of women every month. We've all used to work together at some point, but we come together just to check on each other, just to make sure like our pulse is good. Right. It's strong. And we've had some of our peers, they've lost their loved ones over the past year. And, just being in community, and we laugh and we gossip and we eat and we just have a great time. And while we were laughing and gossiping and eating, there was somebody who walked into the restaurant that I hadn't seen in years and just was like, oh my gosh, Kendra. And she was like, your book. Now, this is an administrative assistant, right? She was like, your book. Oh my gosh. It's like, wow, thank you. Like, people in the restaurant turn around like, well, who's she? And I was, almost, I wish I would have had the book in my pocket. I would have like, well, I am the co-author of this fabulous book. But, you just don't know until you bump into people, what they say. And it's been very positive. And I feel like I have this great responsibility, I think Kelly will say too, to honor the words that these women are experiencing, and to do it, it creates an additional responsibility to do good and be good and to live out our convictions as we said so in the book.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, I've had those as well, just when let's see, what is it? When our January newsletter dropped, almost immediately I got an email from someone saying,
Yeah.
the work that you're doing is unbelievable. And I sent it to Kendra right away. I said, you need to see this. But I think where for me, the work gets both incredibly impactful for me and very emotional is when Kendra and I, especially in our keynotes, because our keynotes are pretty raw. And and in our keynotes and afterwards, I get two kinds of reactions. One is when a Black woman comes up to me and says, I've never heard a white woman say the things that you just said. I wish more white women could say those same things. And that's where we're trying to head to, that we can, because a lot of this work for the white women who want to do this work, it's dismantling their whiteness because it's centered around everything. And it's centered around how we show up with other women in the room. We are missing so much of womanhood in the room because of our whiteness. If I didn't know how to put some things down and take some feedback that Kendra can give me, I would miss this incredible friendship that we have, this sisterhood that we have. So when that is said to me, it is everything. And at the same time, when I've had white women come up and say, where do I begin? What do I read first? Where do I start? And, I'll give them a couple book recommendations, or say, look, call me. Don't call Kendra. Call me. I'll help you. I'll help you through it. I'll give you some books to read, and then, call me. So that's where, because what it says to me is, if we can start that deep, heavy conversation internally, imagine someday where we can all sit in the same room and, white women and women of color can all feel comfortable with each other. Kendra and I just had probably the most profound experience of my life. We presented at the Courageous Conversations conference, and we both attended the same session, and it was a conversation between Black and white women. So that's what it was. We were all in the room, and there was a moderator, and I tend to be very just the facts, ma'am. I want the data, and what Kendra's pulled out of me is the emotional part. And to be in that room and just hear, Black women say, I don't always feel safe around white women, and white women say, I don't know what, I don't know what to do, or I'm trying to figure it out, or, and we're going to make mistakes, but I want to learn, and I want to know how to do that. And that was, if we can have more of those honest, deep conversations, imagine on the other side of that someday that we all sit in a room and we say, I'm making room for you. Because we're missing so much of womanhood because, well, it just comes down to whiteness and white supremacy. So that's where all the other stuff I get a huge kick out of too. And I just think it's just profoundly impactful work. But that's where I just get really grounded in this.
Wow.
Thank you both so much.
Wow.
Welcome.
What an amazing discussion today. I am sure our listeners got so much out of this because we got so much out of this. We want to thank you, Kelly and Kendra, and we want to take this opportunity for you to just share where can individuals follow you, where can they find all the information about the Lucy Project, Lucy Leadership Project, where can they buy the book, where can they get the book talk, everything. So please take this time to share.
Well, I'm going to jump in, Kelly,
Yeah.
and just put this plug, and then I'll have you talk about the
Sure.
other things. And so we've made a commitment for this year for 2024, and the one commitment is to sell or to share. Let me just say this because that sounds like a sales thing, but to share, have 10,000 people read our book. That's an audacious goal, right? That's Brene Brown like goal. But we're like, let's go for 10,000 women educators, men who are supporting women in educational leadership, school districts, organizations. We want to have 10,000 individual people read our stories and engage with us. So that's a big audacious goal, and we're launching it, right? That's you're hearing it first, right? We're gonna launch it during our anniversary next week, and because we do believe in the richness of our work and the stories. We believe stories matter, and this story is our story, and so we want to lift up the stories of others. And who knows, there'll be maybe a part 2, Kelly, where we're lifting the stories and unwrapping others and chronicling the lives of women who have moved from surviving to thriving. So that's one way. Kelly, what's the others?
So the other big goal is we would like to have at least 3 unwrapped book clubs moving and starting this year. Because courage is contagious. So you start with 3 of those, and then they can ripple out. But here's what I would suggest. We are very active on social media. In fact, Dawn and I met through LinkedIn.
Yep.
And so we're very active on social media. So follow us on, I still call it Twitter X, whatever they call it, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel and Facebook. So if you follow Lucy Leadership Project on all of those, you'll see we post. So we do a monthly book talk live, which is free. Anybody can come on. You can interact with us. We take questions. We always have a guest. There's a topic. So that's one. Also, if you go into lucyleadership.com, you'll get a drop down. Subscribe to our newsletter, because then we'll put everything in there. There's always some good content, but then here's what's coming up. Here's the next book talk. Here's where we'll be speaking. We have these workshops coming up. So how can you register for those? So the newsletter is another really great way to follow and know what's going on. And then our website, lucyleadership.com, has everything on there. So there's a page where how you can engage with us together. We facilitate a whole bunch of different workshops together, but then we also do have our own unique specialty area. So you'll see that on there. You can enroll in the modules on there. So everything is on the website. So that's another great way. And here's the last one, but I think probably maybe the most important. Kendra and I are not a big conglomerate organization. It is us.
It's just us,
right?
Yeah.
It is us. We have a small team that helps us with social media, but pretty much it's us. Email us if you have any questions. If you're not sure how to find something, we will respond.
Yep.
So you're not going into like a big organization. Just say, hey, Kelly, how can I find? Hey, Kendra, how can I find? lucyleadership@gmail.com. So just email us. Isn't that right? Yeah, .com.
Lucy Leadership Project @gmail.com.
Project, Lucy Leader. Thank you.
Don't forget the project part.
Lucy Leadership Project @gmail. So just email us if you can't find it, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction or send you there or send you a link.
Yep.
So thank you for asking that.
Perfect. We really want to say thank you so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed this episode, and we trust that those of you who are viewing and listening also enjoyed. And so to our audience, we want to thank you for joining us on the Leading with Purpose podcast today. Again, I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
I am Maisha Bihoy.
I'm Dawn Bornheimer. As you navigate your leadership journey, please remember it is not just a philosophy, but a commitment to social impact.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your network. And don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an opportunity to explore the intersection of leadership and purpose.
Continue to lead, empower, inspire, and achieve.
And until next time, lead with passion, lead with a positive intention, and by all means, continue to lead with purpose. Thank you for joining the Leading with Purpose podcast. Please join us every Monday for a new episode.